Okay, good evening, Stuttgart. First of all, I want to start by thanking you for joining. And thanks to many of you that submitted questions in advance. I've had a chance to look through many of them, and I am hopeful that I will answer many of those right out of the starting gates. As always, we've got many experts that are participating virtually and will likely correct me if I'm wrong and fill in the gaps where I may come up short. I want to start tonight by welcoming Charlene Schuler, our ACS volunteer coordinator, who will help me recognize some of our heavy-hitting community volunteers. And then after that, I'll go into a COVID update, some of the community's efforts to prevent the spread of this virus, and then go through some topics designed to answer some of those questions that came in advance. So with that, I guess, first of all, as a community, I know we've been working to figure out how to do some of those things that we historically came together to do, whether we're talking about church, changes of command, changes of responsibility, retirement ceremonies, graduations, all kinds of ceremonies that are, kind of the fabric of our life as a military community. April was Volunteer Recognition Month, and COVID clearly has created an opportunity to highlight kind of the immeasurable impacts that volunteers have had on our community. Those gaps that we didn't know existed that this virus very quickly highlighted, they stepped into. Some of you may have picked up just out on the racks today, the May version of the Stuttgart Citizen that highlights the incredible volunteers across the community. If you haven't seen it, pick up a copy or download a copy at the Stuttgart Citizen. You can see tons of pictures of our volunteers and our families. Interestingly, before all of this, we were scheduled to host the Volunteer Appreciation Award Ceremony tonight. It was going to be over on Patch, followed by an ice cream social. Of course, those, not that you can't have ice cream, but we couldn't have an ice cream social. So we're going to try and recognize our volunteers and our winners in some of those award categories, in a different way. And so with that, I want to introduce you to Charlene, and we will start with that recognition ceremony.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you. We, as you know, we originally planned to have the recognition ceremony today, and I'm very appreciative and humble that you're allowing me to be able to recognize our volunteers tonight. As normally, if we had the big celebration, I'd be presenting this check for you to show you the great jobs that our volunteers have done. We had 643 volunteers who registered 65,272 hours.
Wow.
Which, when we convert this to money, it means that they saved the garrison $1,659,867.
Where do I go to deposit that?
I think Paul's already tried to claim it already earlier. So as you know, volunteers are the backbone of our community, whether they're volunteering 1 hour or 2,000 hours. We owe our volunteers a debt of gratitude. And with that, I'd like to start off with announcing the Commander's Volunteer Award of Excellence recipients who volunteered 1,000 or more hours during 2019. We have 7 to honor tonight. Michael Bixon, who volunteered 1,064 hours for the USO as a front desk and event volunteer. Patricia Chang, who volunteered 1,202 hours for the Stuttgart Law Center, volunteering as a legal assistance attorney, specifically dealing with immigration. Gudrun Kopper volunteered 1,098 hours as a German immersion and religious education instructor. Carrie Kittinger volunteered 1,021 hours for AFN as their social media manager and with AWAG as their public relations officer. Cami McGurk volunteered 1,507 hours as the Stuttgart Community Spouses Club president and a thrift shop volunteer. Kyla Sikorsky volunteered 1,442 hours with the Stuttgart Theater Center as part of the backstage crew, performer, and as a leader with the Girl Scouts. And Ursula Werner volunteered 1,102 hours with the Girl Scouts as a committee member and the Stuttgart Theater Center as part of the front of the house crew.
Well, that's fantastic. Congratulations to all of us.
now we'll move on to announce the Volunteer of the Year nominees and recipients. There are 6 award categories that volunteer organizations nominated their best volunteers for their contributions during 2019. A panel of judges from different organizations were honored to read all of the nomination packets and wish that they could have picked all the nominees to win these awards. Thank you again for our judges for all of your hard work.
So the first Volunteer of the Year award in the youth category goes to Bettina Wagner. Ms. Wagner was nominated by the American Red Cross Stuttgart Station. Congratulations, Bettina. So just for context, for each of the individuals that were nominated, we did reach out to them and ask for, their award speech, with the caveat that if you hear the music playing as you're typing it out, you need to shorten it quickly. So we have some of the comments here, if you would please.
All right, so Ms. Wagner stated, I have learned that the goal of the Red Cross is not to be an outlier, but rather to unify a community through meaningful work. I enjoy volunteering at the Red Cross because I know that the projects that I am a part of are guaranteed to benefit someone, whether they are near or afar. This sense of purpose, of maturity, and of learning how to help others in different ways is serotonin at its finest. While volunteering has often been regarded as selfless, the aspects of personal reward and what you can do can sometimes make you feel selfish. So with that in mind, be selfish and volunteer. Congratulations again, Bettina, for receiving the Volunteer of the Year award in the youth category.
Awesome. So our next category is Spouse Volunteer of the Year, and we have 7 outstanding spouses to honor today. The first nominee is Mr. Michael Bitson. Mr. Bitson was nominated by the USO as a front desk and event volunteer. The second nominee is Ms. Patricia Chang, nominated by the Stuttgart Law Center as a volunteer legal assistance attorney. Ms. Natalie Glenn is our third nominee in the spouse category. She was nominated by the Kelly Barracks Post Office for a position as a Kelly Post Office mail-in file clerk. Fourth nominee is Ms. Karen Hansis, nominated by ACS as a volunteer English as a second language instructor. The fifth one is Ms. Carrie Kittinger, nominated by AFN Stuttgart for her role as a social media manager. Ms. Melissa McDaniel is a sixth spouse nominee, nominated by the American Red Cross Stuttgart Station. She volunteered as the intake and casework lead. And the seventh nominee in the spouse category was nominated by Stuttgart Theater Center, Ms. Kyla Sikorsky. Ms. Sikorsky volunteered as part of the backstage and front house crews as a performer as well.
Okay. The recipient for the Volunteer of the Year in the spouse category is Mrs. Patricia Chang. Ms. Chang stated, I must say, as an immigrant, I understand the agony of being separated from loved ones and family. That is the very reason I am devoted to helping our community members to reunite with their family due to immigration issues. My happiest moment is when a family is brought together with my legal assistance. Congratulations again, Patricia.
Fantastic, Patricia. Okay, next category is for Civilian Volunteer of the Year. We have 3 deserving nominees to honor today.
All right, the first nominee is Ms. Aona Clark, nominated by the USO for her role as an event volunteer, working at the front desk, lead volunteer, and program admin. The second nominee is Mr. Stephen Dunlap, nominated by the American Red Cross, Stuttgart Station. Mr. Dunlap volunteered as a training services instructor. Mr. Richard Random, nominated by the Stuttgart Theater Center, is our third nominee in the civilian category. Mr. Random volunteered as a performer and part of the backstage crew.
So the recipient of the Volunteer of the Year in the civilian category is Miss Aona Clark.
Ms. Clark stated, thank you for the recognition. I love to volunteer at the USO because they give you an opportunity to help our community in various ways. I especially enjoy helping to plan and create events and programs for people in our community, giving them things to do and ways to connect with others. I had the privilege of enjoying different community events with friends and family growing up in my hometown, and I want to give back to the same opportunities to the people in each community that I'm a part of. Congratulations again, Aona.
Fantastic. So our next category is the Military Volunteer of the Year. We have 5 nominees in this category. The first nominee is Staff Sergeant Aaron Bode, who was nominated by the USO for volunteering during events and as a center representative volunteer. The second nominee is Petty Officer First Class Matthew Friesen, nominated by Robinson Barracks Centrum for his role as an RBZ food truck coordinator, mailroom volunteer, and Lego Club lead. The third nominee is PFC Imani Robinson, nominated by her unit, the 554th MP, for volunteering her time as a cheer coach for the Stuttgart High School cheer team. Our fourth nominee is Sergeant John Strack, nominated by the Stuttgart Theater Center as part of the backstage in front of the house crew and as a performer. And our fifth nominee is in the military category is Sergeant First Class Promotable Quentin Watson, nominated by Child and Youth Services for volunteering his time as a youth sports coach. And the recipient of the Military Volunteer this year is PFC Imani Robinson. Congratulations.
PFC Robinson stated, "In all honesty, I do things I'm passionate about without the thought of getting acknowledged, because I love to see the growth in others, especially the younger community. I take the role as a coach and volunteer to provide others the opportunity to trust, serve as a mentor, and to guide youth in great directions in life." Congratulations again, PFC Robinson.
Senior Volunteer of the Year is the fifth category, and we have 3 outstanding senior citizens to honor today.
The first nominee is Ms. Frida Campbell, nominated by the USO as the lead volunteer of brochure management. The second nominee is Mr. Ron Talbot's, nominated by ACS for volunteering as his time as a German immersion instructor. He also volunteered at the FAT office in 2019. Our third nominee is Ms. Ursula Warner, nominated by USA Girl Scouts Overseas, Stuttgart. Ms. Warner volunteered for many roles to include troop leader, special events coordinator, host nation liaison, and global facilitator.
The recipient of the Volunteer of the Year in the senior category is Ms. Ursula Warner.
Ms. Warner stated, "The question for me actually is, why should I not volunteer? You get back so much more than you invest. When I am passionate about something, I like to share my passion and knowledge with others and hope to inspire them. That's why I've volunteered for the Girl Scouts for over 30 years, watching young girls grow into confident young women who still remember me as someone who made a difference in their lives." Congratulations again, Ms. Warner.
Okay, so the final category for Volunteer of the Year is the team category. And so we received 2 top-notch nominations in that category. Please highlight those, Charlene.
Yes. So the first team nomination is the Red Cross Volunteer Services team. This team consisted of 13 amazing volunteers: Steve Dunlap, Deborah Papalia, Zoe Dole Kalinowski, Carrie Smith, Jenny Seal, Lynn Goad, Cora Monahan, Curtis Dyer, Sue Cowden, Heather Furby, Tisha Weech, Justine Warrior, and Karam Alvarez Almodovar. Together, they volunteered 1,668 hours as a team for 2019.
Fantastic.
The second team nomination is the Robinson Barracks Zentrum. This team consisted of 15 dedicated volunteers: Mariah Alves, Cameron Anderson, Sarah Boding, Jennifer Borkey, Hillary Breedlove, Becky Callahan, Lauren Elliott, Matt Friesen, Kami Kerfis, Dana Martin, Victoria McNeil, Catherine Orozco, Kimberly Fair, Celia Segovia, and Melissa Stamfly. Together, this team volunteered 1,469 hours for 2019.
Okay, and our last category, the Volunteer of the Year in the team category, the winner is the American Red Cross Stuttgart Station. Congratulations.
The American Red Cross Training Services team provides to the community valuable life-saving skills while simultaneously improving their own medical know-how. Therefore, the American Red Cross Training Services team not only volunteers to provide resiliency to hundreds of people, they also garner a wonderful sense of accomplishment by teaching. Congratulations again, Red Cross Team Stuttgart Station.
Awesome. Congratulations.
So thank you again, Colonel Condrey and the PAO, for allowing me to be here tonight to honor all of our volunteers. They are all amazing. I will contact the nominees and the recipients for your certificates and awards when it's a safer time to do so. And thank you to MWR and our sponsor, Stuttgart Marriott Hotel Sindelfingen, for their support. And a big thank you to our current volunteers who have stepped up to support our community by volunteering at the commissaries, PX, and the post offices, and by shopping and running errands for others. I am always humbled by your answer to call for requests, especially the last minute ones. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for that.
Well, thanks, Charlene. I appreciate you being here tonight, and thank you to all of our volunteers out here. I think, even though we've highlighted some incredible efforts, I think it only scratches the surface of what we've seen here in the community, and especially as you look at the last couple of weeks. But there's always a need for more. So if you feel the calling, pick up your smartphone, push the COVID button, push the volunteer. That's who receives your request to volunteer and helps to link you up with something that inspires you and hopefully answers a need within the community. So thanks, Charlene. I really appreciate you helping me recognize our fantastic volunteers, finding a new and different way to do something that has historically been part of our community. And again, download, pick up a copy of The Citizen. There's some incredible stories, some incredible photos of the members of our community. I want to go into some things that are happening across the community. I know I generally start with an update on COVID, and I will tell you that our combined efforts to break the spread of the virus, especially as it hides in those that don't quite know that they have symptoms, or some that will never even show symptoms, it's been largely successful. Today marks well over a week since our last positive case, and we've only had one in the last 3 or so weeks. So that's because of the efforts of individuals and units and the things that we've done as a community to deliberately break the way this virus acts and spreads. So those are fantastic results. In many ways they're a blessing, but a curse at the same time. I sense the urgency to return to something that looks like what we all once knew as normal. And for the most part, I appreciate the response of the community and the leaders across the community to slow how we expose ourselves across the community, because the virus isn't gone. I don't think that's news to anyone. I get to speak often with mayors and city officials across Stuttgart, the places where the majority of our community lives, and they're very delicately trying to balance, the public health emergency against the need for people to put food on the table, to keep businesses from, shuttering that have been open for generations, and what would be the lasting impacts of those kind of things, and for the most part, our community, it only has to balance the public health emergency, against our cabin fever, our sense of urgency to do something that was like what we considered to be normal months ago. And so that difference between, what we must do versus what our partners out in the local community must do, that allows us a little bit more time, a little bit more breathing space, and requires a little bit more patience to see how the easing of restrictions around us may have an impact on our families and our readiness to execute our mission. So that's where you see the deliberate lag in how we do things as compared to our partners. And so things are changing. I anticipate within the next 24 hours we will see Amendment 8 published by the state, and that will highlight how they will move forward. And our state and the state of Bavaria tend to be the more conservative states across the nation. And so they're going to be very cautious about how they open up, what they open up, and very deliberate about the method in which they do it and the processes that they put in place in order to measure whether or not they've done too much too fast. You know, some of the stores, services, shops, you see it out there. They started opening on the 20th. And we were slowly bringing some of the things that we had here in the community open after that. And so, though we haven't seen that final amendment from, that came out of the Minister President's meeting with the Chancellor yesterday, we have great relationships with leadership and an insider view into what changes we should anticipate. And so there's going to be things that change as it relates to gatherings in public, gatherings in private, opening shops, restaurants, museums, parks, sports, tourism, and even events. But I will tell you that the latter three, the sports, tourism, events, those are going to be very slow, going to be very deliberate. And as best as we can, we're going to mirror what they're doing on the installation so that we are nested well with our partners. So as a result of those easing of limitations, tomorrow morning, Major General Gerard will publish an update to General Order 1. And I'll go back to General Order 1 Alpha. That was focused on how we meet our national agreement obligations with our partners as they put restrictions in place, public health measures that protected the nation that we are living in from this virus. As many of you have identified, an order that's focused on enforcing restrictions has some challenges as those restrictions are eased. So we've been coordinating General Order 1 Bravo with headquarters across the installation. And the intent is to describe how we will pace the easing of our restrictions based upon what we see within the local community. And so, like General Order 1 Alpha, it will be applicable to all individuals stationed, assigned, or attached here in Stuttgart. So that's all service members, civilians, family members. And if you don't find yourself in one of those categories, I'll add to that anybody that seeks access to this installation coming into the gate, whether by car or by foot. That's who this order applies to. It's going to be focused on the public health measures, and we will pace off the host nation as it relates to travel, both official and unofficial travel you do in your time. We'll pace off our host nation orders and directives and the public health measures they put in place for their services, for their facilities, how they do protective measures such as masks, hygiene, and distancing. And I will tell you that as they ease those things, expect us to delay easing those things. It will reinforce medical directives such as quarantine and isolation as orders. And finally, it will outline how to seek some sort of exceptions, because there's no way that a 1, 2, or 15-page document will highlight all of the different variables that a community of 28,000 will be able to identify and the things that may pop up while that order is in place. And so while we're going to pace off our host nation partners, and you've heard me say that many times, for those of you that have a bingo card with PACE in one of the squares, I know you've marked that several times over. We are going to be limited by ensuring that we have set the conditions within our facilities, within our staff, so that we are meeting and exceeding, in many cases, the standards that you will see off the installation. And so, in some cases, I'm not going to be able to open up the day after a late announcement from the Minister President. We're going to be deliberate about how we do things. We're going to make sure it's done right, and then we'll open it up. We're having conversations about how and when we adjust red, white, and blue. I know we've put lots of things in place to mitigate some of the inconveniences related to shopping 3 days out of 15, and how to address your inability to go into a store. Several different measures built into red, white, and blue, whether you're talking about how the community shops, whether you're talking about how the staff is arranged, whether you're talking about opening. And so I see all those as potential ways that we can adjust that. And I'm having conversations with the owners of those services to see how we can do it. I'm going to maintain some form of those measures in those services where a single positive result will close it down. So I'm telling you that in advance. So when you ask me why we haven't changed it for this service, it is because I understand how we're staffing it. I understand the limitations that are most likely behind the scenes. And if I can't guarantee that we'll be able to only briefly shut it down, then we'll still maintain some sort of measures. And that will be an inconvenience. I acknowledge that. I'm willing to absorb your ire in order to make sure that that service remains open. So we're going to delay some of those changes. Well, I want to see what happens as people that are feeling the same urgency about getting back to work, about getting back to restaurants and other services, what kind of impact that has. Does that create an increase in infections? We've only had one in about 3 weeks. I want to maintain that. And so I'm going to talk about some of the things that we've already made the decision to expand or reopen. So starting 11 May, I know a lot have been concerned about how often or how frequent the VAT and UTAP offices open. So we're going to open those up. We're going to do it by appointments. Passport SOFA office. Many of you ordered passports. They came in. They're waiting for you. We're going to make contact with those individuals, schedule time to see them. We're going to try and find a way to do paperwork in advance so that when the State Department reopens some of those consular activities, we're ready to go and able to support those people that either have a newborn or need passport and SOFA support as they leave here or arrive. On the 18th, the Service Credit Union is going to open up yet another branch. Program openings. So AFES, I know, first of all, barber shop, beauty shop. I've been working with our general manager, and as quickly as we can get those open, I know they opened up on the economy, as quickly as we can get those open with the standards in place, we will open those. So after tonight's live stream, I'll call and talk with Michael Ryan, and we'll put something up that matches both on the AFES website with the Garrison website to provide some precision with when barbershop will be open. How do you call and make an appointment? So a lot of the things that we're going to open up, you will see that there are going to be some additional requirements as it comes to knowing who's there, when they were there, so that should we have some sort of positive test result, we're able to quickly do rapid tracing and make sure that anybody that may have had contact with an individual knows and is able to go into some sort of protective posture. So not just the barbershop, but the other concessions there in the Exchange Mall. Now those are also private businesses, so they have a vote as to when they open. They have to make sure that they put all the protective measures in place. There's going to be, for those services that aren't appointment only, there's going to be capacity limits, just as we see at our other services, just as we see at the commissaries and elsewhere. We're going to reopen the golf course. I'll work with the MWR team and see how we reopen our tennis courts. Anticipate that our host nation, state officials, they will authorize sports where you can ensure no physical contact, or at least maintain 1.5 meters of physical distancing. And so there's two things that we have that fall within the specific examples that they referenced, and that's golf and that's tennis. So we'll work through what it takes to implement. We were looking to reopen how we do some of the fitness classes that we did in our sports centers, and find some ways to do those in our outdoor spaces. Of course, the days we plan those, it will rain, so come prepared to get wet. But we've got to make sure that our instructors are ready to go. I know the big question is, when can I get back into the gym? Some of it's as simple as I would like to go for a run and then go shower in the gym, but I don't know when those facilities are going to open. And for those of you that do sports out in town, I think you can expect that the changing rooms and the restrooms in and around those facilities, they're not going to be open anytime soon either. And so I come back to the events. I know we're working on things like graduation? How do we do changes of command? How do we do changes of responsibility? Some of those other ceremonies, retirement ceremonies that are coming up. We're still working with our with our higher headquarters, with our host nation partners, as to how we do what we consider to be smaller scale events. How we do those in a way that recognize that we need to minimize the chance of spread of the virus. And so more to follow on that. As we plan each and every one of those, we plan based upon the measures that we have in place right now, and then of course against the measures that we hope are in place at the time of execution. And so I will tell you to maintain some flexibility as we look at those things. So I'll now go to some of the questions that came up during the live stream. Hopefully I've answered many of the ones that came up before, but I'm sure I've created several others, especially as the video broke. So please, first question.
So this is a question about policy regarding uniforms.
Okay.
Should we still wear uniforms when commuting as earlier directed?
So as long as you are in your own vehicle, not using public transportation, no reason why you shouldn't wear a uniform to and from work. Again, the limitations on wearing uniforms off the installation, they're a result of other threats not related to this pandemic. And so I've not seen any information that would cause us to change that policy now or to ease that policy for that matter either.
Sir, quite a few questions about playgrounds.
Yeah.
Alina asked, will the playgrounds be open? Bill asking, when are the playgrounds on base? Please, they're open out in town. It's hard to keep my kids off. Kelsey asked, Germany is now allowing for families to gather with another family on the same post. That's not about playgrounds. So a lot of general questions about playgrounds and kids.
Yeah, so the concern that I've seen the guidance from our host nation, and it's something to the effect of another, your kid plus another kid can be on the playground at the same time. As I try and envision a way to implement that here on the installation, I can't even imagine the appointment tracker or the scheduling or how to maintain an understanding of who is on it when, and should somebody get sick, how to then trace the contacts that came from a set of monkey bars from a kid that has bad allergies. So we're going to lag when it comes to playgrounds until I have a better understanding of how often they need to be cleaned and what kind of information I can give to parents so that you can then protect your children as much as possible from what's happening on the playground. Because I've got no illusions about our ability to keep the capacity on the playground down to one kid and a friend, and how to deconflict should another family want to come out on the playground next. How long should they be on it? I don't even want to go down that path until things have changed. So we're going to lag on playgrounds. And does that mean you can go off the installation and duel with the German family on a playground? As you review General Order 1 Bravo, yes, it will create that provision where as long as you are in line with the host nation's public health measures, that's acceptable. But on the installation, we can barely prevent two kids being on a playground from becoming a party now. I don't anticipate that we'll be able to implement controls necessary to prevent spread. So you're going to have to wait on changes as it relates to playgrounds.
So the next question is about masks while driving. Screeners have said no, Polizei are saying yes. Some clarity.
So lots of questions early on about masks while driving as it relates to their ticketing system. The concern that we've seen as it relates to masks while driving is that there's the potential, depending on what kind of fabric you've chosen, what you're using, that it may impede your ability to drive. The purpose of a mask is to prevent the spread of the virus when you're within 6 feet of somebody else. And so if you are driving and there is somebody in your car that's not part of your family, you probably should wear a mask and make sure that you're wearing a mask that if you are driving doesn't cause you to have a problem with carbon monoxide and pass out behind the wheel. But if there's nobody else in your car, or it's just you and your family, there's no reason to have a mask on until you get to the gate or until you have an interaction with Pullet's eye, and that may happen. When that happens, have your mask on. If you're dealing with somebody that you don't know, and you don't know if they have the virus or not, and so that very quickly expands the population to almost everyone except for those that you have contact with day in and day out, that have a mask on. I think the mask is going to be our greatest source of protection, and it's probably going to be one of the enduring things that we have in place for many months to come. So get comfortable with masks. Figure out how we can wear them when we can wear them.
So you touched upon host nation information and General Order Number 1 in your remarks. A couple questions regarding that. Christy asks, we saw a recent post about German law allowing 4 people in your home. Since this is not a public gathering, is this within the guidance of General Order number 1 in place? And then Kelsey asks, along the same lines, Germany is now allowing for families to gather with one another. When will we be able to do the same on post?
So, first of all, General Gerard will issue General Order 1. I anticipate very soon after the commands on this installation will implement their versions of general orders that align with that. And so I'm hesitant to say with a blank statement, this is approved, this is not approved. And so as we publish those, if we've created questions, then we'll address those questions. And in many cases, those questions will need to be directed to those that are enforcing them based upon what organization you're associated with. So we'll publish it tomorrow. The intent of the order is to be as aligned as possible with the protective measures that are in place across the state, and in many cases across the entire nation. So not a real answer, but I think that as you get the order in your hand, you'll have a better understanding of what it means.
Sir, a couple questions regarding post offices and CMRs. Shauna is asking, when will the RB post office reopen? And Rosario asks, can the post office offer services paying with a credit card instead of cash? It's not been easy to prepare packages or mail for delivery.
So say the second part again, credit card versus cash?
Can a post office offer services paying with credit card instead of cash?
So, post office is one of those things where, we as a garrison play by, rules that we don't make. And when it comes to staffing, that's another example of it. So, this virus has impacted us in lots of different ways, and we don't quite know what the impacts are on certain categories, certain individuals that potentially are categorized as high risk, and so that impacts some of our postal staff, and so that means I don't have the ability to open up all of the post offices in the way that I did before. And in some cases, that's because somebody's out and it has nothing to do with COVID. So we'll look to find out, how we might be able to, to make sure that every installation has an opportunity to have some of those services reopen. I'll talk with the postmaster about that and see if that's part of the schedule that we can work in. But there will be limitations, and as I see them, we're going to have issues when it comes to trying to restart childcare. We're going to have issues when it comes to some of the community recreation things that we used to do. When it comes to the youth sports or even the adult sports, we don't have the ability to open up school aid services. So all those things, as we're working through those problems right now. We're getting guidance. We're trying to figure out with the space that we have and the new rules that we believe we'll be operating under, and the preventative measures that we must put in place, how we do that with the facilities and the people that we have, and do it in a way that minimizes risk to everyone involved, whether it's a member of the staff or whether it's a member of the community that wants to use that. So Is that the last? We have one more question.
Oh, we have time for 2 quick questions,
Okay,
sir.
2 quick questions.
This one has to do with the commissaries. Michael is asking, are you expecting a limit on purchasing fresh meat at the commissary as they are implementing now in the States?
So, when it comes to things in our commissaries, I have the opportunity to listen to the DECA leadership across the entire region, and so of course they're aware of supply interruptions related to things that are happening in the States. Whether you're talking about Clorox wipes or meat or dairy, and so the first thing that they do is look for alternatives locally. And of course, when you look at something like bacon, we have an American view of what bacon is supposed to be, what it's supposed to look like, and so there's not an easy replacement for everything. But I'll tell you that the leadership across DECA is looking to find ways to make sure that the things that you expect to find in the commissary is still there. It may not have come from the same place, but it's the same quality, and in many cases much better. And to do that in a manner that minimizes a wait, a delay, minimizes a gap on a shelf as much as possible. And so they're anticipating these things. They're trying to find local vendors, and as often as possible. We had that with pasta as we started this, and they very quickly rolled into bringing other producers, other companies into our stores to fill the gaps.
That's a segue to our last question, sir, from an anonymous requester who wants to know,
I love the anonymous ones.
Can our PT test be postponed? Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. So, with 2 months of gyms closed, I assure everyone, I'm assuming that everyone's run time is much, much better than it used to be. I don't know when we're going to resume physical fitness testing, and I'm sure every service will do that a little bit different, because it has something to do with promotions, has something to do with schoolings, has something to do with selections. I understand that that's a big part of of those of us that wear uniform, of our lifestyle and of readiness, the ability to do our job. So as we get word of changes, we'll let the community know, and I know that we'll try and go at that through every chain of command. So you have multiple ways of finding out that information. So more to follow on that soon. Like many things, as soon as I know, as soon as we know, we'll do our best to share that current update with the community. I know we'll put a lot of information out tonight. We'll follow up with some of the details, so that you have an understanding. And in many cases, the staff curses me because I put out a date that something will be open, and the reality is, I either misread it in an email or misheard it during an update brief, and they're scrambled to try and meet what I've told the community in a venue like this. And there are things that are outside of our control that may cause us to delay stuff. And again, when that happens, I'll be the first one to say, oh, I had it wrong, and here's the date that we think it'll be, and here's why it'll be delayed. So I appreciate participation tonight. Some great questions, even the anonymous ones. This week's an interesting week. So Teacher Appreciation Week, National Nurses Week. So thank a teacher, thank a nurse. I would say hug a teacher, hug a nurse, but if you're at home, hug a homeschool teacher. We can do that. Victory in Europe Day is tomorrow. We've got some fantastic efforts by UCOM, on their webpage, by AFN, and it's Mother's Day this weekend. So putting all the fathers out there on notice, it's Mother's Day this weekend. So I'll close with wash your hands, mask up. It's COVID day until it's not. I want you to stay healthy. I want you to stay vigilant. Let's maintain what we've had going on. Thanks, and have a good night.